So then I was basically on my third crunch, and that's when I just knew that it was going to come out, and so I ran to the bathroom and vomited it up. And so,
that is awesome. Oh, we're on? Sorry.
I guess I should start this up
we'll cover that one later. Thomas will dial up to 10 minutes on the timer, so we are official. I've got a couple announcements before we get going.
All right.
First thing is we only have a couple more days for the $300 discount, so you can save some money before this Friday, October 30th, if you register. So go register. If you haven't registered already, you've got a tiny window of time before that discount goes away. So do that one.
That's a lot of money.
That is a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's some serious coin. Also want to congratulate, I think it's Calciol is the screen name. Philip from Denmark, more friendly version, solved the last hard hat challenge that the Microsoft puzzle crew that came on our last show put out a puzzle, and he solved that one pretty quickly. So congratulations, and we've got the shirt in the mail.
And those aren't easy. I mean, those aren't like a little Sudoku type thing.
Exactly.
That's pretty awesome.
So it's a pretty big accomplishment. And the last thing before we get to the good stuff is Ineta, the folks who are helping us put together the Birds of a Feather this year. Matter of fact, they're not just helping, they're pretty much doing it, and we're just giving a room that's dedicated to it. They're still accepting submissions for BOFs until October 31st.
So. And what is Birds of a Feather?
So Birds of a Feather is basically sessions not given by Microsoft. They're moderated discussions more than anything else.
Kind of like the open conference type of thing.
Where people with similar interests get together, they gather, they talk, and this time we're actually giving them a room like a session would have a room. So they can have formal discussions. We'll put them on our calendar so it's easy to find where they are, and they pretty much just run throughout the whole event.
Nice.
So they're still accepting submissions, so there's a little chance to get them in. And they've published on their site, which is www.pdcbof.com. We'll put that in the show notes, where you can read some of them, and I just printed a couple off. One, developers on better design, user experience, and why it matters.
Hey, it does matter.
As a Mix Online guy, I know that's near and dear to your heart. Exception management, handling and reporting exceptions effectively. So whether you should throw exceptions, return error codes, I'm guessing that's the kind of discussion there. ASP.NET MVC, share your stories from the trenches. So some real other people using ASP.NET MVC, what have they learned, a chance to discuss it with folks. Will cloud computing change your life? I know it's changed my life.
Yeah, I would say so.
Claims-based identity, should I use Silverlight MVC or web forms for web user interface development?
That's a great one, because I hear that all the time. People are like, hey, which thing should I be using? And it's you know, and they want it based on reality too. And I think that's what's nice about sort of this format is that you're going to hear from people who aren't just going to kind of pontificate, but they're going to say, hey, here were the decisions I had to make. And you know, the decisions aren't always the easiest to figure out which one of those to use. And so that's going to be an awesome one.
And it depends on your scenario, right? There's no clear-cut use this or that. It always depends on your scenario. Right. So that'll be good to hear. And then they have a special event, 6 to 7 p.m. Tuesday, November 17th. So that'd be day one, basically, that evening, where they have people like David Chappelle, Scott Hanselman, Fritz Onion, Miguel de Casa, Sarah Ford, and even Carl Franklin. They're going to record it as a .NET show, and they call it the Ineta BOF Community Roundtable. So that sounds like a fun one. Yeah. So Ineta's doing a lot of work, www.pdcbof.com. Submit your BOF idea, and hopefully we'll see it at the event. So other than that, we have with us the esteemed Thomas Lewis, a.k.a. the Spider King, with us, the guy from Mix Online, right?
Yep.
So visit Mix.com.
Visit Mix.com.
And you were doing what at PDC, dude?
So doing quite a few things, but probably the most interesting thing is that I am a track owner. So you've had track owners, you've had track owners on here before, like Volker and Tim and folks like that. And basically what From the Labs is it's sort of a kind of a new virtual track that we've created. So what happens is a lot of the sessions that people are going to see at the PDC are pretty much from product teams. So product teams you know and love, like, you know, ASP.NET, Azure, and things like that. But we have these things called labs, and probably people have heard of them, Live Labs, Office Labs, Search Labs. There's quite a few around.
Microsoft Research has labs as well.
Microsoft Research has labs as well. And what we want to do is sort of showcase these folks and kind of the work that they're doing. Now, what's sort of interesting is that people always kind of wonder, like, well, what's the difference between product labs or products and research and these labs?
Right, because it's just all Microsoft, maybe from an outside perspective.
Well, actually, it all falls under R&D. So when people talk about Microsoft's R&D, they're not just talking about research, they're not just talking about the products, but they're talking about the whole thing. So sort of the difference is it's kind of like on a spectrum in a way. So if you look at product teams, they're really focused in on pragmatic code, right? It's something that can be used, you know, typically within 26 languages, has gone through these full tests and things like that. Then sort of on the other side of it, you have research. And these are the people who are, I would say, visionary. They're thinking about things like, hey, what does computing look like, 5 years, 10 years from now? So that teleportation device that we all have been wanting,
you bet.
I'm sure Microsoft Research has some kind of project going along with that. But then there's sort of this sort of middle space.
Okay.
And this is where, you want to do incubation, right? So for example, product teams have sort of these life cycles that they're on, and there's sort of a bar for how things move into a product team. But there's times at which we want to sort of get things out there that we think are very important, and we want to kind of get that feedback from people. But it's gone sort of beyond visionary to something that's kind of real.
Tangible.
These are real working prototypes or projects that folks can do. So what we wanted to do at PDC especially was to kind of look across all these different labs and some research and figure out what are the things that people would want to see at the event. So we came up with a set of sessions. In fact, if you go up to the website today, there's a From the Labs tag that you can click on in the session browser, and it'll show you the 6 that we have there.
Okay.
And then, so what's kind of nice is we have some really cool ones. A couple of them I thought people would be interested in is, we're not known for real short, terse
of course not.
session names.
Very long session names.
So we have one, it's called Managing Development to Inspire Innovation and Create Great User Experiences. And what it really is we have a really great guy, Bill Crow, who is from the Sea Dragon team.
Oh, yeah.
So
the
people,
zooming technology.
Exactly, from that people have seen in Silverlight. And so what he's going to do is he's going to kind of talk about what is it that people, what is it people need to do to make sure they have really responsive applications? So like, for example, when you see that zooming and all that, there's a lot of stuff that's happening behind the scenes. I mean, we're talking about very large collections of stuff that you can zoom in on. And what they want to make sure is that they never have a spinning cursor, for example. So there's a lot of things that you need to think about when you're doing that type of thing. So
just like pre-caching things, preloading things, maybe those kinds of things.
Exactly. And and how do you put these like collections together so that they are very performant? And what's kind of nice is he's going to show some stuff off that hasn't been seen before. So some brand new things.
There's a tease on every one of our shows.
Oh yes. So it's if people are interested in Silverlight or even Ajax, I think this is one of those that people are going to want to go and check out.
Very cool.
Another interesting one is, and again, a very long one, Code Contracts and PECs. Power charge your assertions and unit tests.
Sounds geeky.
It does. So one of the things that happens sometimes is that people write code and maybe they don't put those unit tests in, right?
Why are you glaring at me like that?
Well, sometimes I've seen the code that you write, but no. But like what happens sometimes is that people inherit code bases all the time. And they get this code base and they look and they say, oh my gosh, there's not one unit test for this.
No coverage.
But they don't really have the time to go in and say, oh, I'm going to write all these out. What they want to do is sort of create a baseline. So what PEX allows you to do is to actually, it's a Visual Studio add-in that you have it run over your code. And what it does is it will create these unit tests for you by analyzing your code. And what's nice is if you add new functionality, so let's say you do a conditional statement like if monkey equals true.
Right.
What PEX will do is it will analyze that code and say, oh, you've put in a new test case. Let me go ahead and add that to the test case, which is really, really cool.
So if the test's first development never happened on the original project, this is a way to kind of revisit the project later and just integrate it as part of your build routine, part of your testing routine.
Exactly.
And by the way, monkey always returns true. I do remember that fact.
That's
it's immutable, I think.
Well, they teach that in all the comp sci classes
of course.
in universities and in schools everywhere. Another part of that particular one is code contracts. So code contracts allows you to put in sort of preconditions to say, hey, if you're going to run this, for example, you're going to divide something. You're going to be able to say, hey, this shouldn't be able to be divisible by 0, or that we shouldn't pass in a 0 as part of the parameters, and it'll kind of do that. So a lot of people talk about code by design or design by coding. I believe it came from Eiffel, if I'm correct.
The language.
So or code contracts. And so what's kind of neat is that you can kind of put those preconditions in. No!